Are we live? Hi, good evening, everyone. Hi, good evening, everyone. Is my audio and video okay? Is my audio and video okay? Good evening, Prashit. Good evening, Farhan. Okay, awesome. Hi, Nikhil. Awesome, awesome. So today we are going to create a very popular product called Calendly. Okay, what is Calendly basically? If you don't know about Calendly, it is a meeting scheduling app. Okay, so basically, I just give you a link. Suppose you want to talk to me one to one, right? One way is to go on Discord. One way is Discord, right? The other way is Calendly. So I create a link. So suppose we have me, we have you, right? If you want to schedule a meeting with me, I give you a link, a Calendly link. Similarly, I give the same link to suppose five other people, right? Now all of the six people want to schedule a meeting with me for a one-to-one call, right? So I share a Calendly link. What it does is in that Calendly link, you see some options of my availability, right? For example, for today, I am available at 1 p.m., for 2 p.m., for 3 p.m., and so on. Suppose you blocked my 2 p.m. So the other people will not see 2 p.m. over here. They will see 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. Okay. This is how Calendly works. Calendly is very similar to Google Calendar, but just that you won't be able to see my whole calendar. Just the timing that you want to set up for today, you see what are the available timings for me, right? I can set up the schedule duration. For example, I say I can be available for 30 minutes every day, right? Or I can schedule it for the day wise. For example, on Monday, I am available from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. On Tuesday, I am available from 12 to say 7 p.m., right? And so on. So I just give my schedule to Calendly, and Calendly takes care of who can schedule what they can do and things like those, right? Once you schedule a call, we have multiple plugins in Calendly which gives the schedule to whatever I prefer. So, for example, if I use Outlook, right? So my schedule will be in the Outlook calendar. If I use Google Calendar, my schedule will be shown in Google Calendar and things like this. Okay, understood what Calendly does? It is a scheduling app, right? Meeting scheduling app. When you come to calendly.com, you simply create an account, you log in, you will see my account over here. This dashboard comes up, right? Here I can schedule multiple meetings. This is my Calendly link. I can give this Calendly link to anybody. They can see my all the schedules. Or I can give this specific 30-minute meeting link. I can create a new event type for 1 hour, for group session, for collective session, for round robin, and things like this. Okay. So suppose you want to schedule a 30-minute meeting for me, then I give you this link. I copy this link. I give you this link. you will see, okay, the Calendly is down. 1 second. Let me create a new event. So I connect my Google Calendar with this. I allow my Google Calendar to it, right? Now it has my email ID. It is connected to my Google account, right? Similarly, if I want to connect to Outlook and things like those, I can do that. I can set up my availability over here. I have the availability page over here, right? I can set for Monday, I'm available between 12 p.m. to 11 p.m. Right? On Monday, I am available between 6 to 11, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, etc. Okay. So I schedule my availability from here. I tell Calendly that okay, I'm available between this time at this day, and create a link for sharing. Right? If you get my link, you will see something like this. Okay. Now, if you want to set a meeting with me on 30th, you have all this timing, right? Suppose somebody have already scheduled 7 p.m., so 7 p.m. will not be shown to him. All these are 30 minutes duration, so 6 to 6:30. The next available timing is 6:30, 6:30 to 7, 7 to 7:30, and so on. When you click on some of them, confirm, you put in your name, you put in your email, right? If you want to add guest or if you want to have some notes with it, and click on schedule. So it will schedule a 30-minute meeting for 30-minute meeting with me at 6 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. I will get a notification on my email account, and I will also see it on my Google Calendar, whatever I have connected this to, right? See, over here on 30th, I have 6 p.m. with uh, my name, title, and things like those, right? It can also give me the reschedule link. It can also connect Google Meet meeting with me, or if any other video services that I like. So it has various plugins. Okay, understood what Calendly does? We have this dashboard. We have our availability page where I set in the availability of each day, right? Then a link gets created, which I can share it to anybody, right? Uh, I can edit this as well. Here I set up, I am available 60 calendar days. The meeting duration is 30 minutes. On Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm available at these times, right? I also have before event and after event where I can set that there should be a 15-minute gap between each of the events. So I can do something like this, right? Is this understood? Did everybody of you get what Calendly is? Why is it useful? Yes? Create your account. It is free, right? Create a new meeting, set in your availability, and share your link to anybody who requires your availability, right? So we are going to create this Calendly. Okay, all good. I also wanted to touch MongoDB. So we are going to use MongoDB in today's class, right? And in today's class, we are going to create my user flow. So this user flow, we are going to create the schedule, the events, and things like those. Over here, there are three things. One is the user itself. One is the availability, right? And the third one is the meeting itself or the schedule or event, right? Three things: user, your the user schedule or the availability, and the third one is the event itself. So we are going to create, we are going to use MongoDB. For MongoDB, just like SQLite, we have something called Mongooose. It specifically works for non SQLite databases, right? So for MongoDB, we use Mongooose, just like we were using SQLite. We are going to use bcrypt. There is something called CORS as well. We are going to discuss that today. .env for reading the env files. Express, like everyday, like right, JSON Web Token, and these are the dev dependencies, Morgan and NodeMon, right? Okay. I have created the validators functions before because we have already touched all these. I have created my env where I have put in the MongoDB URI. This is the URL on which the MongoDB is running. Okay. The port of the application would be 1338. MongoDB URL. This is the default MongoDB URL. It goes to MongoDB / localhost 27017, and the table name would be, or the database name would be Calendly, right? So MongoDB has their own server running. By default, the server runs on 27017. Okay, we have to connect to the server to use MongoDB. I also have a secret for the authentication part, right? Now let's create our connection with the DB. So let's have the config folder. Inside that, let's have db.js. You will see that it is very, very similar to SQLite. I just wanted to touch MongoDB, so I'm using Mongooose today. Just like SQLite, we first have to require Mongooose, right? We also be using the MongoDB URI over here, so we require .env. So let's require .env dot config. Let's call this function, right? Now the DB URI, the URL of the MongoDB server, we will get in process dot env dot db URI, or MongoDB, what is it? Mongo URI, right? Now simply I just have to connect to Mongoose. There are some options that I want to set. So let's have the Mongo options equal to user new URL parser set to true. Forget about what these does. Just they are just some options that I am setting up. Okay. We are using Mongoose now. To download MongoDB, you just have to go to the website, download it, just like any other software that you download. Right? If you simply search for download MongoDB, you will find its download thing, and you can simply download it as an exe or just like any other software. Okay. When you do that in your terminal, you simply have to write Mongo and you should see something, right? Now I am inside MongoDB server. If I want to exit, I simply write exit. It says bye. To connect to MongoDB, we are using Mongooose package just like we were using Sequelize. Okay, Nitu? Abhishek, did you understood? I already told you I have downloaded these packages, right? Mongoose, JSON Web Token, Express.env, CORS, bcrypt. These are the packages that we are going to use today. To save time, I have already downloaded them. Right? Now let's connect to the database. To connect to the database, simply use await mongoose.connect. The DB URI and the options, right? Just like any other packages, require the package, put in some options and call its method, right? It's always 3 lines. Require the package, put in some options and call the function, right? Let's have console.log Mongo connected. And over here, let's have console.log Mongo not connected with the error, right? If suppose you want to crash the server, you want to come out of the server if the MongoDB connection does not fulfills, there is something called process.exit. Okay, it will not try to connect to. This is simply Control C if you have created Express server before, or Command C, right? So basically, you come out of the server if any error comes, right? Let's have module.exports equal to connect DB. Right. This is how you connect to MongoDB. Any doubts? Simply you have to call this function with the DB URI. What is the URI? It is MongoDB // localhost 27017. Right? Slash your database name. Okay. So we have created our database. Let's create our models now. We had 3 things, right? We had a user model, we have its availability or the schedule. So let's have schedule model, and let's have the event model. Okay, 3 things we are going to have. Let's create our user model first. For this, just like Sequelize, first have the Mongooose equal to require Mongooose, right? And let's create our schema. So user schema equal to new, this should be capital, Mongoose dot schema, and you put in your schema over here. Okay, what will we have? We will have name of type string, right? We would say the required, this field is required, right? We would have email with the same thing, type string and required true. Okay, we would have password with the same thing, type string and required true, right? We can have events inside this. What is the specific events for this specific user? It would be an array of objects, right? And it will link to, it will have a foreign key to events table. So we would say, we would store mongoose dot schema dot types dot object id. We would store object id over here, right? And this should be referred to events table, right? Similarly, we would have schedules. This is not compulsory, but I just wanted to show you how to create a foreign key inside your MongoDB, right? This would be of reference to schedule. And now let's define our table name. Module.exports equal to mongoose.model. The name is always capital in this. It starts with a capital letter. Okay, and the user schema. This is how you connect to one connection to another connection. Itu. You simply store in the ID of any row of this inside events, right? Mongo will take care of how to populate it. Right. I don't think so. There is much difference you guys are seeing between Mongoose and this thing, Sequelize. The difference between schema and model is basically the table, and the schema is the table structure. Okay. Here you are creating a new table of the name of user, and you are defining the structure of the columns over here, or the structure of the object over here. Why use default mongoose? Forget about this. It got auto-populated. Right. That default mongoose and this is the same thing. Whatever mongoose is sending in default, we are storing it in this variable. So both of that line is the same thing. By table structure, do you mean the column names? Column names and what they are going to store. What is the type of the values? That is the table structure. Right? Over here, it is not table, it is basically a JavaScript object. This would be the key and this would be the value types. Right? The same thing we were doing in SQL is also the same thing we are doing in Mongo also, right? Let's create our schedule model. Again, let's have Mongoose, right? Uh, Let me copy this line as well. In place of user schema, we would have schedule schema, right? What will this have? This will have the user of type the ID. Okay, we will store the user ID in this. The reference is the user table. Okay, we will store the day. Type is date, right? And this would be required to true. Yes, new is the only keyword. We have to create a new object of this class, right? Uh, the start time of this date, right? Right now we are creating the availability wala part. In the availability, we have uh, the specific day, and what is the available start time and end time for that specific day. So we are storing the day over here. We are storing the start time and end time over here. Okay. This would be of type date also. This would be required as well, right? Similarly, end date, right? Uh, it also asks for the duration. What would be the duration of this? For this, I have set 30 minutes. So let us store that duration as well. What is the event duration that I want to set, right? This would be of type date, and this would be required as well, right? And this can store the events. Let me just copy this, or better copy this. We will have an array of objects with, uh, we would store IDs, and we would be referencing them to event table. Okay. At the last, let's export this by creating a table. The table name would be schedule, and this would be schedule schema. Right. We have set our availability. We have our user. We would store the user ID over here. We would set in for which day this is we are saving. For example, for Monday, what is the start time and what is the end time? What would be the duration for this? For example, 30 minutes, 1 hour, things like those. And what are the events associated with this specific availability? Okay, let's come to event model now. Let me just copy the whole thing and paste it over here. Let me remove this. This would be named event. This would be named event schema. Right. For events, what all do we require? For events, what all do we require? If I come over here, now we are talking about this page, right? I want the name of who is scheduling or the email of who is scheduling. I'm just taking the email right here. Who is scheduling, to whom they are scheduling, right? What is the schedule? What is the title of the event? What is the description? What is the start date and the end date, right? So let's have Menti email over here. This would be of type string. This would be required, right? Who is scheduling, to whom it is scheduling. So this would have my ID. Let's call it mentor ID, right? This would be of type object because you do not need to be a part of this thing. You do not need to log in. Okay. Object ID, Mongooze schema types object ID. This would reference to user. Okay. Let's have the schedule of that user over here. This would be of type, again an object ID or an ID of schedule table, right? What is the title of this event? This would be of type string, right? Uh, Required true. Similarly, we would have description, and we would have start date, start and end. So let me just copy this, put it over here. The event would have at what date this event occurred, what was the start time of the event, what was the end time of the event. So let's just call it start and end. Okay. We create our model. In Mongo terms, tables are called models. So we would have event with this schema. Okay. So we have all our schema. I tell you how it will look in your database. So your MongoDB database is basically a very big object, right? This would be the table name. Inside this, we would have all these things. Okay, let me just remove all these. Name would be of a string type. Email would be of a string type. Password would be of a string type. Your events would be an array of objects. Your schedule would be an array of objects. This is how your user schema would look like. Similarly, if we talk about schedule would look like this. user, it would have an ID. Suppose the ID over here is 1. So this would have the ID of 1. Okay. This will reference to this user object, right? If you know about the reference comes into this. So it would be a reference of this dot user of that specific ID. Okay. Uh, day day would be some date, right? Let's call it new date, or we could use this thing also, moment, right? So let's just say that this is a new moment. Moment is a library for handling date and time. Day start, day end, duration, events, right? Similarly, we would have day and date, days, all these. We would also have events. This would be day dot this dot events, right? And we would have a key for events, which would have all the event-based thing. Okay. Now you understood what is model. A model in simple terms is the outermost key, right? This is the schema, how your inside object would look like. That is called a schema. This is a model, right? And if there is a reference, the reference internally MongoDB handle it with this keyword. Okay. Any number of tables that you create in MongoDB is basically a very big object. Now you understood the whole thing. Are there any doubts in the models? We have divided it into 3 models. We can store everything inside user only, right? But we have divided it into 3 because divide and conquer. We have to normalize our structure at a very, I mean, each table should be considered for specific things only, right? Is this structure clear? Are there any doubts in models? Are there any doubts in models? Clear? Nitu? Nitu, do you have any doubts in models? Yes, either you can use Movement or you can use Day.js, whatever you prefer. Movement is a little bigger library, so people nowadays do not prefer Movement; they prefer Day.js. Day.js is much smaller library, so you can use Day.js or Movement, whatever you feel like. Right. We have created our models. Let's create our middlewares as well. We are going to use auth middleware, right? We have already covered auth middleware, so I'm just copy pasting the code from somewhere from our some previous projects. Let it just run. Give it a second. Are there any doubts? Nitu, do you have any doubt? Nitu? Right. So we have our middleware for the authentication for is authenticated. Just to check is authenticated, we have our JWT, right, from JSON Web Token. We have our user model from models user model. If to check is authenticated, we are going to get authorization header, right, from request.headers.authorization. We are going to get our bearer token. If we do not find the header token, authorization token, we are going to say you must be logged in, right? Then we have to split bearer and the token, right? And we have to get the first part, that is the token itself. Now we decode it using jwt.verify the token and with the secret that we have in our env, right? Now to find the person, we will use await user.findById, right? In your SQL based database, we have find one. Here it is find by ID. We just simply put the ID that is decoded from the JWT into this, right? And it will check for the ID and return the user. We will store it in the user variable. If the user is not found, we will say 404 the user is not found. Otherwise, we would set it in request.user, just like we did previously, right? And we will call the next uh, middleware, right? If any error occurs, we will catch it and we will say 503 token is not valid. I hope there is no doubt in is authenticated. We have already covered this in our previous lectures. Let's create the routes. Are there any doubts? I hope there are no doubts. Let's create our server first in app.js. The name does not matter. Express equal to require express, right? Now, before this, let us understand one more thing. Let me just delete this. Hmm. Now, suppose you have a server. Okay, you are running a company, you have a server, for example, Google server. All the servers have APIs. That is how any browser connects to those APIs, correct? For example, this is some government server where all your sensitive informations are there, or any kind of server for that matter, right? If you get the URL, if you get the token, can you make an API call and get the data? Is that true or not? Only get calls are used to get the data. You can make the get API calls if you have anybody's URL, if the backend URL and a token, right? Suppose me and you are living in the same apartment, right? Suppose me and you are living in the same apartment. Now I am a hacker. You logged in your government website or you logged in your Facebook. Now I simply come to you, right? You are uh, you're giving me your laptop for doing something for just 1 minute, right? In that 1 minute, I'm simply doing inspect element and getting the URL and simply copying all the cookies from your logged in website. It will take just 1 minute for me to do that, right? Now you took your laptop from me. I have the URL, I have your web token. I come to Postman, or I come to my own website, right? I create a JavaScript file and simply call this URL with headers in the authorization, the bearer token, right? Is this a good thing? Is this a security flaw or not? In just 1 minute, I got your bearer token. I used JavaScript to call this URL with your token. Now I can log into your Facebook account or not. Is that true or not? Or suppose you're making some API for public, right? Can anyone hit your API? Can anybody hit your API? No, right? They should not be able to hit your APIs and get the data, right? So by default, there is something called CORS. What happens is any front end or any API hitting services are blocked to hit on your server, right? They are blocked to hit on your server. You yourself have to put in or whitelist the URL or the servers on which you can get the call, right? For example, if your front end is running on google.com, right? And a server named facebook.com is trying to hit google.com. This should not be allowed. So what google.com server would have done is they have whitelisted google.com only, right? So any request from facebook.com will be banned and will not be able to hit the servers. Okay, this is called CORS. What is the full form of CORS? Cross oriented, I forgot. Cross origin resource sharing, right? Cross origin resource sharing is an HTTP header based mechanism that allows a server to indicate any origins, domain, scheme, or port other than its own from which a browser should permit loading resources, right? Any resources should not be shared until and unless I have whitelisted and put it in cross-origin resource sharing, right? You have to pass in specific headers from the browser. Browser mainly does it for you, where they say that, okay, this is the server that is hitting your server. So do you want to allow it or not, right? To have CORS on your backend, you simply use the CORS library. You require the CORS library, right? And you call in the function. If you simply come over here and search for course npm, you will find the course npm over here. They will tell you the installation and everything. You simply require this course and put it in app.use. That's it, right? Now, if you want to whitelist only example.com, right? So you put in the course options inside your course function. Okay. Whenever this is also middleware only. So whenever, for example, if somebody is hitting your product slash ID API, making a get call, you put in this function course with the course options, right? And it will only URL with example.com will be able to call this API. Otherwise, they will not be able to call this API, right? If suppose there are more than one URL that you want to whitelist, you simply have an array of strings. You pass in this function course option origin. What is the origin? If it is in the whitelist object, then you pass in true, you pass the callback. Otherwise, you say that it is not allowed by course. Okay. Any doubts in course? Any doubts in course? Simply do app.set course. Okay. Now I want to use the .env to get the port. So I need to require .env .config, right? And I have to listen app.listen to process .env dot port. And when it is listening, let's have a callback. The server is running. Console.log server is running. Okay, right. Now let's have the connect DB. Require it from ./config/db, right? And call that function connectdb, or put it in when the server is running. Or let's move it outside anyways. Right. Now we will have to have the middlewares, right? Let's create our routes as well. So we would have multiple routes. We would set it in app.use. If the API is coming on API v1 slash user, they should call the user routes. Similarly for schedule and similarly for event, right? This should be schedule routes. This should be event routes. Let's require them as well. constant user routes. This should come from dot slash routes slash user routes. Similarly, let's have schedule and event routes. Schedule routes, event routes. Right? You guys understanding everything, right? I hope there are no doubts before we move forward. What we have done, we have connected to our MongoDB server using require Mongoose, right? And the MongoDB URI. We just have to call mongoose.connect, put in the URI, put in the options. The options are use a new URL parser, use unified topology. It's use new URL parser. Yes, right. When we have it, we will say MongoDB connected. Otherwise, we will say MongoDB not connected. Then we created our models. We have mongoose.model user. Inside that, we pass in the user schema. We create user schema by new mongoose.schema. We pass in the schema. We have name of type string required true, email type string required true, password, events, and schedules. Event and schedule will be an array of IDs where we would put in the IDs. This is reference to event table or event model, and this is reference to schedule model. Right over here in the schedule model, we have user, day, date start, date end, event duration, and the events. In events, we have who is creating the event, their email, my ID, the connected schedule, the title of the event, description, day, start, end, bus. Right? We have also created a middleware for authentication. We required user from user model, right? Uh, we decrypted our JWT. We used user.findById to get the user. Right from the decoded JWT, we set in our request.user. We called our next. Right. Now let's create our routes. If you guys are not understanding, please do let me know. Let's have our userRoutes.js. Okay, let me just copy this. We have already covered sign up and sign in. It would be exact same thing. Right. We have our Express, we have our bcrypt, we have our JWT. We have our user model from model slash user model. We have our validations, validated name, email, and password from validators. We created express.router. We are exporting express.router, right? Then we created a post for sign up. We will get name, email, and password in request.body. We will find one using that email if the user already exists. If it already exists, we will send 403 with the error user already exists, right? Uh, if the user does not exist, we will check for the name. If name is invalid, we will say username invalid. We will check for email. We will say invalid email. We will check for password. We will say invalid password. Right. Then we will hash the password before saving with the salt or rounds as 10. We'll create our user details with name, email, and password. Right. In MongoDB, uh, we simply need to create a new object of this user model to save it, or you can also use user.create. Simply put in our details, create a new instance in row in our user model, and we say new user.save. Okay. In SQL, we were using user.create. In Mongo, we create a new object of this user model, and we say new user.save. Right? We will say the user has created successfully. In case of sign-in, you will get an email and password. You will check all the validations. You will find the user if the user exists with the email. If the user does not exist, you will say 404. You will compare using bcrypt.compare with the password at the existing user password. If the password is incorrect, you would say incorrect credentials, right? Then you will create a payload, convert it into JWT, and put it in the request.cookie with expiry of some date, right? If everything goes as planned, you will say sign in with the bearer token, right? For sign out, you simply clear the cookies and you send up uh, signed out successfully. I hope there are no doubts in user model. I hope there are no doubts in user model. All clear? Awesome. Then we should have sheduleRoutes.js. This is for the availability thing, right? One we need for creation. We are going to create a post API call for creating the schedule. One is if we want to get somebody's schedule, right? One is for updation and one would be for deletion. So let's do that as well. Express.router. We will module.exports this router, right? We will also have to check if the user is authenticated or not. Then we require is authenticated from middleware slash auth, right? We would require the schedule model. Model slash schedule model. We can also use user, so let's require it as well. Dot slash models user model. Right. Now let's first create post call of creating this schedule. Right. So we will call it create API. First we need to check if the user is authenticated. We call is authenticated. Then we have a sync with request and response. Whenever we have async, we should use try and catch. Right. In request.body, what all we are going to get? We are going to get day start, day end, and the event duration inside request.body. Right. We have already set request.user. So let's use request.user. We can get the user from request.user.id, right? If the user is found, let's make a DB call to find the user to get all its information. Let's have it inside found user. Await user dot find by ID with the user ID above, right? If the user is not found, then we would return response.status as 404 dot JSON user not found, right? If it is found, let's check the present schedule of the user. So let's get the present schedule. Find one, the user at that specific date, right? We have to check before creating, we have to check whether there is availability or not, right? So for that, we need its availability, or we need the user schedule for that specific day. If it is already present at that specific day, then we would say status 403 dot JSON schedule already exists, right? If uh, the schedule is not there, if we are creating the availability, right? If the availability data is already present, then we would say the availability data is already present. We cannot update it in this API. There is a different API for that, right? If it is not there, then we would say new schedule equal to new schedule. Let's make this capital. Put it over here, put it over here. Right. What all does it require? It requires the user. It requires day. It requires day start. It requires day end. It requires event duration. Right. And we would say await new schedule dot save. This will save the availability for that specific day. Right. And we would push it inside the user schedules. Right. In your user model, we have the schedule array, right? So we will push it in the user model and save this change as well, right? If everything goes as planned, we will send 200.json the new schedule. right? Otherwise, we would say, let's have the return statement over here. Let's have the return statement over here. 500.json. The error is E. Okay. This is to create a new schedule. Now let's create an API to get some specific schedule, right? So get slash, we will have a schedule ID over here, request and response, try catch, right? Let's find the user, and inside that, let's find the schedule ID, or you can directly call the schedule ID. I'm just checking if the schedule ID is inside the user or not. Await user dot find by ID, or in place of schedule ID for any specific user, let's give in all the schedules that it has. Okay, so we would get it in request dot params dot user ID. Yes. Right. If the user is not found, then return with response dot status 404 dot JSON user not found. Right. If suppose user is found, then what do we do? We find the user ID in the schedule table. Schedule equal to await schedule dot find, right, the user with the user ID, and return this as to entered dot JSON schedule. Okay, these were straightforward. I don't hope there is any doubt. Are there any doubts? Let me just wait here for a second and see if there are any doubts. How are we converting the duration? We are not converting any duration. We are simply storing it uh, in the database as a date time. For example, if already meeting at 9 to 9:30, so backend should already set in the start date and start time and end time. Frontend can take care of these things, whether to show the availability over here or not. If you go to the booking page, frontend can take care of the timing shows or not. You return all the scheduled dates, the start date and the end date of each one of them. Frontend decides what time to show over here. Okay. If it is not there on the front end, then uh, The person will not be able to do it. And anyways, we have to check while creating a meeting in the backend as well. Okay, Yogesh? Meeting wala part we have not touched yet. See, we are creating this thing right here. We are creating the availability wala thing. We are creating this API right now. We have not touched meetings right now. We are creating this. Okay. Is this going over the head? Okay. Let me do one thing. Let me stop over here. Let's create the schedule and events in the next class, right? So we have created our schedule. We have get all the schedules of a specific user. Okay, till now. Let's create the rest of the API calls in the next class. You can see the code in the description down below, right? If you go through the code, you will have a better understanding. I do not want to rush into things, right? Okay, so this was all for today's class. I will meet you in the Mahasabha BC. Have a very happy new year. Peace.